Locally at our office in just outside of Orlando. Those virtually, good to see you guys through the computer screen as well. We're going to have some fun today. My name is Jason DeBono. I'm the president here at Nuview Trust Company. And we're going to talk today about big bucks and small accounts. Really what we're focused on is how do you take accounts that may not have 100, 200, 300,000 hours of savings and put them to work. Right, so we're going to walk through a couple different things. We'll talk a little bit about the power of saving. I think we start there. And then we're going to talk about some of the strategies we've seen our clients deploy and invest into smaller amounts. And we'll even talk about some things that are even more recent. We'll certainly open up the whiteboard here as needed. But just a quick primer. Nuview Trust Company, we are a third-party passive custodian regulated out of the state of South Dakota. We are a publicly chartered trust company. We do not provide investment advice, recommend investments, or provide any sort of endorsements for investments. So we are 100% a passive custodian. We service just over $2 billion of assets. We've got a team of just over 50, some here in Florida and some in our trust office in South Dakota. But our role in this process is to be the custodian. It's to hold the assets. It's to take your direction as the customer, and then hold those assets, report accordingly. What is your role in a self-directed account? Well, it's the self-direction, right? It's find the investments, evaluate them, do your due diligence, determine when to buy them, when to sell them, and make those sorts of decisions. So we're going to walk through that in pretty good detail today. One of the things that I just want to kind of mentally make sure everybody gets, and I see this all the time, is they take the concept of saving and investing and they call it the same thing. We're all guilty of this, right? But in reality, it's really a choice to save and then a choice to invest. And my belief is that true wealth, real wealth, is built when you learn how to save. And then independently, you learn how to invest. And then you determine where the points of intersection are between those. Right? So, for example, if you have money that you're going to go out and invest into a CD, right? Rates are looking good today. May not be a bad idea. Well, depends on where you have money sitting as to what's best for it. So if I've got money sitting in my personal account, I probably may not, I have to be more mindful of a CD if it's timed, right? Maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years. So what's my use case of that money, right? If I have money in an IRA, I may ask myself, is a CD the best investment for my IRA? If I have an educational account, a health savings account, if I have money that's being saved but earmarked for the long term, I may have money in a business. All of these are buckets of money that we can put money into. So we're going to focus on the tax advantage buckets today. Now, when I put this illustration up here, it's really to help people remember you have to make a conscious, independent decision to save. Then you can make a conscious, independent decision to invest. And until then, you may be missing opportunity on one side or the other. And we'll talk a little bit about investments that may fit in other buckets better, right? So I have people that say, I have an IRA CD. I'll say, no, you don't. You have an IRA. Inside that IRA, you've decided to buy a CD. Two separate things. People say, oh, I have a retirement account. It's all the real estate I own. I say, no, you have real estate that you've chosen to buy in your personal name. Nothing wrong with that. But it's not a retirement plan. Now, you may use that as your tool to create income for retirement. I won't disagree with that at all. But retirement plans are separate thoughts, right? They're a savings vehicle. So as we walk through this today, make sure that we're thinking about, hey, how are we saving? Where am I putting my money? What vehicles? And am I creating the most tax efficient environment for that? And then once you've made those decisions, now we get to have the fun part, which is what do I want to put it into? And in a perfect world, you're looking at each independent investment across a myriad of savings vehicles, right? So we'll talk through this a little bit further, but I'll give you a very high-level illustration. Oil and gas at a very simplistic concept, but you can invest into oil and gas limited partnerships, and they tend to have very big tax benefits. Right? Now, if I want to go invest 50 grand into that deal, that's this over here. That's an investment thought, right? Well, I have to decide what vehicle is best to put that in. Now, if all things are equal, meaning I have money in a business account, my personal account, in a retirement account, and I have 50 grand in all of them, the retirement account is actually the last place that I would put it, believe it or not. Why? Because the investment is tax advantaged. So if I put a tax advantage investment in a tax advantage account, I don't get double the tax advantage. I'm giving up one or the other. So the losses that that oil and gas endeavor may generate from a tax standpoint year one is wasted in an IRA. Now, that said, if the only place I have money is my IRA, and I believe it's a great investment independent of the tax deduction early on, then I would do it still. So I'm not saying don't put oil and gas in an IRA, but what I'm saying is, are we thinking about the investment on its own 2 feet compared to the account I could put it in on its own 2 feet? Does that make sense? So I will actually get a better return by putting the same oil and gas investment into my personal name and taking the tax benefits as you would get by putting it into your IRA and foregoing those tax benefits, or vice versa, right? So that's what I want people to be focused on, and I want you guys to be thinking about is, are we really looking at these as separate, true decisions? And they are, right? So let's talk about saving, and I'll illustrate why tax advantages are actually better than the investment. Now, I'm not saying you don't need good quality investments. Trust me, no one gets to success with good quality investments. But I want to show you how important just a tax decision can be on the exact same decision. Now, you've probably heard if you double a dollar every year, I've used this scenario, you double a penny, you double a quarter, it really doesn't matter, right? It factors to the same. I like a dollar because it's numbers I can use. But if you took a dollar and you doubled it every single year for 20 years, and you paid tax every year at 25% on that income, you would have $72,570. Now, you would be sitting around with your friends saying, hey, I'm a pretty good investor. I turned $1 into $72,000 over 20 years. Nobody would suggest that that wasn't a good deal. But because I look at investments separately from my savings, right? I save, then I invest. I'm going to look at that dollar and say, man, doubling every year is a pretty healthy return. I'm giving Uncle Sam a lot of that money. The investment has no inherent tax benefit, but is there a vehicle I could put it into that does? So you do it in your personal name, right? And you're celebrating. I do it in my IRA, and I end up with $1 million. Same dollar, same time period, same return. But look at the gap by not paying tax each year. This is how the wealthy build their wealth. They find good quality investments and they couple it with good quality tax strategy. And the beauty of retirement accounts as a general rule, in my opinion, is the greatest piece of tax code that exists to everybody. I dare you to find me a piece of tax code that's readily available, that requires no research, no green visored accountants telling you how to manage it, where you can pay your tax up front in a Roth and never pay a penny of tax again. So I could literally have opened a Roth IRA today. I could have deposited $1, right? Took me no time and effort. I could have done this and ended up with $1 million tax free. Same investment, same time period, same return. But because this person focused on the tax implications, this person did not. One person has a whole lot of money. They're not celebrating their success at the same club, right? Now, obviously, $1 doubling every year is extreme, right? That's not how the world works. But when you think about doubling, rule of 72, right, at 10%, we could double every 7 years. So if we have a 30 or 40-year investment horizon, that's 3 or 4 doubling periods. Uncle Sam taking money out of that each time has impact, as you can see. So I'm not here to say that paying tax is bad. Paying tax is not the end of the world. It means you made money. I'm here to say, are we cognizant of why we're paying the tax, and are we looking for ways to not pay it? IRAs represent the only readily available consumer-based tax-free level of growth. Everything else, you can defer it, you can do different things, right? There's a billion strategies out there. It's available to everybody. Everybody has this luxury. And are we using it? So again, I want to kind of keep highlighting this theme throughout our presentation today is, are we thinking about taxes? Are we thinking about saving? And are we thinking about investing, right? Are we thinking about all of this? So let's talk about how to save. Now, saving is critical, right? We're here talking about making money in small accounts because I'll make an assumption that we may have some small accounts somewhere, somehow, and we want to put it to work, right? Now, small is a relative term, depends on what, right? It depends on your age. It depends on how much money you plan to need for retirement. So I'm not here to say small is 1,000, 5,000, 50, or a million, but I'm here to say that small represents an amount of money that you don't feel like you have access to the full investment market yet because it's not big enough, whatever that investment market is. So when we talk about retirement accounts, the first thing that I want to make sure to get across is that you can have as many of these accounts as you qualify for. And in some cases, your contributions don't impact your contributions to other accounts. For example, you can have a traditional Roth SEP or simple, but you can't contribute across the board and hit limits on all four, right? It's the sum of all of those, assuming that you would qualify. But I can have an HSA and an IRA. I can have an IRA and an HSA and an educational savings account. If I'm self-employed, which in today's side hustle environment is pretty easy for most of us, right? Flip on an Uber app for a week and technically you're self-employed. I can have a 401k, an educational savings account, an HSA, and a traditional or Roth IRA. So when we talk about savings, right, my message to you guys is, are you thinking about all the different places you can save money? Now, I get it. You can't just go create $60,000 to put into a 401k. You may not have that level of income to justify that, but are you really pushing the savings envelope? Right? I can tell you the answer for most people is no. We're all notoriously bad savers. It's why 401k plans represent the best savings tool. Why is that? Why do 401ks represent the best savings tool? Any ideas? How's 401k work? Right?
It's been working pretty good for me.
Comes out up front before it gets in your pocket.
That's exactly right. They take it out of your paycheck for you. You will never realize the money's gone if you never saw it. But if I gave you the same $100 per paycheck and said, I'm going to give it to you and then you give it back to me, how many people would actually give it back to me? Right? 20%, 10%, 30%. And that's why 401k plans are so popular. In fact, the Secure Act 2.0, which just came out, we got a blog or our podcast in a couple of weeks should be dropping on Secure 2.0. If you're not familiar with that, definitely take a look at our All About Alts podcast, because that's something that we covered in for about 40 minutes. But they're actually they're pushing, legislation is now creating forced participation, automatic enrollment into 401k plans. And it's smart, right? What they're doing is saying, hey, if I hire you today, and I have a 401k, you're automatically going to get enrolled into the plan. Now you can opt out, but what they're doing is saying, let's let people opt out and make a conscious decision versus forcing them to make a conscious decision to opt in. Because the net result is more people will save. And if I hired you today and you joined my 401k and I gave you 3%, right, or took 3% out of your paycheck, you wouldn't even know it from the get-go because you've never gotten the paycheck anyways. So I'm not a big fan of governments, taking control of my ability to save, but I do support that, right? Let's give people that forced participation because nobody's really telling them how valuable that is. And so they defer and they defer and they defer and they defer, and eventually they realize I need to start a 401k plan at a time where the amount they need to contribute is way too high, right? So all of these plans just represent ways to put money away into a tax advantage opportunity. That's all. Whether one is better than the other depends on your scenario. Not all of these are open-ended qualification, meaning not every one of these are accessible to every person. But if you have earned income, meaning you have money from some sort of payroll, earned income, self-employed income, you would qualify for the traditional or the Roth. If you have income that's self-employed, you qualify for the SEP and the solo 401k. If you have kids, right, grandkids, nieces, nephews, you want to contribute to my kids, you can utilize an ESA. If you have high deductible health insurance, insurance where you are 100% responsible for your deductible or for your expenses up to your deductible, you qualify for an HSA. This actually is the best plan on the board, believe it or not. Now, most people don't even know what this plan is, and many of them have high deductible health insurance. So what an HSA is an HSA was created as a way to help people save to pay for the medical expenses. So if you think about high deductible health insurance, now I will start by saying I do not sell insurance. I'm not in the insurance business. But I learned over the last 10 years why high deductible health insurance is absolutely a very good alternative for many people. And I say many because health is personal, right? Some people need a copay. Some people have pre-existing conditions. So I won't suggest that it's applicable. But most people, when you think about the way insurance works, they just gravitate towards copay insurance because it's what they've always done. They want to go to the doctor and they want to pay $20. That's just the natural way it is, right? We've all said it. Oh, I'm going to go to the doctor. It's only $20. Well, what high deductible health insurance says is it's kind of like your car. Anyone in here or online have a $50 deductible on their car? Of course not. Premium's too expensive. So what do? Oh, I'll do a $500 deductible. Why? Because at $500, my premium goes way down. And you know what? If I bump into someone or I get a little fender bender and it costs me $400, I'll pay it out of pocket, right? We've all been there. It's exactly how our insurance works. Yet for health insurance, we can't actually think the same way. So high deductible health insurance says, just like car insurance, lower your premium to raise your deductible, meaning you're out of pocket more if you use the service. But if you don't have a fender bender or you don't have an issue, you're not out of pocket. Make sense? So if you think about high deductible health insurance, right? For me, if I go to the doctor, and I've been on high deductible health insurance for almost 12 years, if I go to the doctor today, it costs me about $80. I pay it out of my pocket, right? And my insurance ultimately is doing nothing for me. But if I go to the doctor and it turns out I need to have surgery and it's an $8,000 surgery, I only pay up to my $3,200 deductible. But I'm out of pocket $3,200. Now, some people would say, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, depends on how much money I save and how likely I am to have a $3,200 expense. The reason I love this HSA is because what they're doing is saying, in a perfect world, if you have high deductible health insurance, you should be contributing to your HSA so that when you do have that $3,200 expense, right, you use it. So I've always taken my savings, right, whatever the delta is of what I would pay for copay insurance versus high deductible, and I always put that right into my HSA. Now, I personally max this out every single year I can afford to because unlike any other plan, it is the only plan that is tax deductible on the way in, no income earnings limit, and it's 100% tax-free for medical expenses. So think about that. A traditional, you pay the tax when you take it out. A Roth, you pay the tax when you put it in. A simple, you pay the tax when you take it out. An HSA, you don't. You get a deduction to put it in, and it comes out tax-free. So we haven't even talked about the tax benefit, but just dollars and cents for most people from an insurance standpoint. I've accumulated a very sizable HSA because I don't go to the doctor much. Thank God I don't have a need for it, right? And when I do, I pay it out of my pocket. But I know that if something catastrophic happens, I'm covered. That's what you're insuring. Just like your car. You're not insuring the little scratch on the door, you're insuring the car. And that's what high deductible health insurance is. So I'll get off my high deductible health insurance soapbox, but it's really an HSA soapbox. Because if I could put away $38.50 every single year, tax deductible and tax-free on the way out, and I can accumulate that money over years, I have multiple years of deductible saved. Multiple years. Meaning I could have a catastrophic incident and max out my deductible this year, next year, the following, and I won't run out of money. Now, I sincerely hope that doesn't happen, right? But once I've reached that saving point, now I'm the winner on the insurance side, right? What caused me to really understand this was probably 10 or 12 years ago. I was at the dentist, right? And we all love the dentist, end of the year. And I was getting a cleaning, and the dentist, the office manager, I'm kind of cashing out, doing whatever, wrapping up, and it's, I don't know, maybe December. And she says, hey, do you want to schedule anything before the end of the year? And I said, no, I think I'm okay. I'm a 6 months like clockwork cleaning guy. And she's like, well, you've got like $1,800 in your insurance program that you haven't used yet. And I thought, well, what am I going to schedule? A root canal? I don't need the work done, but what was she really saying to me? Jason, your insurance, you have prepaid the right to spend $1,800. And if you don't spend it, who wins? The insurance company. Yet if I utilize high deductible insurance where I paid the lowest premium and had no prepaid credits, right? Who wins if I don't spend the $1,800? I do. And that's all you really need to know about how that works is you are basically self-insuring the front end of your insurance, but you're putting a backstop at your deductible. And that's a really cool opportunity because I can still be protected, insured, and make sure that I'm cared and covered for, but I now create another tax advantage savings vehicle. And one that actually is better than any of them up here, right? Full deduction, fully tax-free. Questions on this? Those of you joining us online, if you do have questions, please get those typed in, and we will get those questions answered as well. Obviously, those here in person, you guys can ask them out loud. But questions on any of this?
The HSA, the 3750 is individual, 3850 is the individual max.
And yeah, thank you for that, Paul. So the numbers that you see here, this is the first number here is the contribution limit. The second number is a catch-up. So if you're over the age of 50, you can put a little bit more in. Down here on the HSA, the 7750 is your family plan. So if your insurance program covers more than one person, you're on a family deductible. If it's just covers you as an individual, you're at the 3850. Just so that you know, you can actually have individual insurance plans that are high deductible. So my wife and I are actually on separate insurance plans, and we have our own individual deductibles. So we each can contribute to an HSA. Now we can't put any more money in as a combined, but we each have separate HSAs. Right? Now, there's a lot of reasons why you may or may not do that. The reason is there wasn't enough savings for us to go onto one plan. Right? So if the cost was better, but it's almost the exact same cost to be on separate plans. Well, why wouldn't I rather be on a separate plan? Because if something happens and I have to go have surgery, my deductible is $7,750. Right? If we're on individual plans, we each have to have something happen where we both max out the insurance to get to the $7,750. Does that make sense? So my premium costs me literally the same to be on separate plans, but I've just given ourselves a cap on our deductibles at $3,850 individually, right? Whereas over here, one incident for any one of us is a $7,000 problem. Now, neither of our kids are on, we have 2 kids, neither of our kids are on high deductible. They're more prone to the doctor, and because they're so young and typically their insurance costs are so low, there's not a big cost savings for them to be on high deductible. So from a strategy standpoint, right, we've looked at it every which way we can. So if we went on a one family plan, right, which is here, it's actually more expensive to be on than to be on 4 individual plans with our 2 kids being on traditional copay plans. Now that's our scenario. Every scenario is different, but I share that because you guys should be looking at that every which way. Asking your insurance provider or your agent or carrier, hey, if I split this into 2 plans, or do we need the same level of coverage? Right? Like, at this point we're past that having kids stage, but when we were, my wife was on a significantly better insurance plan than I was. We paid more per month for it, but we knew that her healthcare costs would be significantly higher than mine in a normal environment, right? And that's the beauty of insurance is you can move this stuff every year, right? And so as life changes, now my wife's on a very similar plan to me, which is very bare bones, right? Backstop for high cost activities, and we're out of pocket for everything in between. And so you can move and maneuver these, but again, I'm not an insurance person, but my biggest thing is if I look at the savings, depending on your tax bracket, right? So if you have an opportunity to save $100 a month in your insurance, not only are you saving $100 a month in your insurance, but if you're in the 25% tax bracket, right, you're saving another $100 on taxes by going with the high deductible. The third element or third arbitrage opportunity to win this game is by not spending all your deductible. And now that's savings that you get to accumulate. Couple that with tax-free growth, and now you've got a fourth arbitrage, right? So that's kind of the game that we're playing. And from a finance standpoint, we should be looking at any and all of these opportunities. So, this is something, it's not where it is literally not where you start, it's where you finish. I hear this all the time. People say, my favorite comment to people when they say, I don't have enough money to self-direct, I'll come back when I do, right? And I always say, you'll never come back. Because if you don't think you can self-direct today, you're not going to save your way to self-direction. Now, do I think it's easier? Sure, right? It's much easier. Right? I'll give you one of the same things that I love giving my wife, and she hates when I say this, but you could go shop anywhere. If I gave you $10 and said, this is what we're, go buy us a shirt for tonight, you could spend $10 and find a shirt. Now, is it exactly what we want? Maybe, maybe not. Do we have to shop a lot harder, look at a lot more racks, go to a lot more stores? Of course we do. If I gave $100, well, you have to go to less stores, a lot easier. The shopping gets easier, but the outcome may still be the same. The difference is a $90 net expense, right? It's no different than investing retirement money. If I told you, here's 10 grand, go invest it, your options are going to be more limited than if I said, here's 100 grand. But to suggest that you can't possibly invest because you don't have the 100 is like saying, I can't possibly wear clothes out of the house today because I don't have the 100. How you invest your money is obviously a byproduct of how much money you have. How much money you have is a byproduct of how you invest your money, right? It's literally countercyclical. They go back and forth, but it has to start somewhere. The one thing, right, that you cannot bypass is saving. You can make great investments, and you can make great investments with small amounts, and you can invest your way to success. But generally, 9 out of 10 times, the people that are making and winning the game from a wealth standpoint are winning both the saving side and the investing side. Because the saving side is the one thing we control, right? It's the one thing we control. But how we get there does give us opportunity, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So, for those without kids, this is one of my favorites. It's the little engine that could, right? And this is where your mindset does have to dictate how you think. And it is, right now, if we're talking about smaller accounts, it's that little IRA that could, right? It could and it can. How do we get it there? Right? So do you have to look differently, shop harder, invest differently, think differently? Of course you do. If your balance of your account doesn't afford you the ability to look on Zillow and just pick the houses that you like and run the back of the napkin numbers, then we got to be strategic. We got to be strategic, but we have to have the mindset to be strategic.
You could have a picture of Usain Bolt on this one as well. Did you know that one of his legs is a quarter of an inch longer than the other?
Really?
He's not supposed to be able to run,
Interesting.
but he decided he was going to run anyway.
What I love about a lot of success stories, and whatever the success is, sports, right, business, life, everyone has this notion, right, that they look and kind of think someone else has something and the path to success was easy for them. And the reality is, I think there's probably a handful of people, right, that just kind of got their whatever they consider success is, and it was handed to them. The other 99.9%, they persevere. Right? There's not a client that I have, and I have many clients with well over $1 million. Not one of those clients had it easy. Those clients started saving at some point. They had $1 in their account at one point. They didn't always have $1 million. So yeah, do they have more investment opportunities available to them today? Sure. They accredited and people come to them with great opportunities? Probably. But guess what? That same person had $5 grand in their account at one point. Then they had 10, then they had 20, then they had 50, then they had 100. Every single account starts somewhere. It starts somewhere. So let's talk about some of the things that we see clients do. Now, this list is not exhaustive, but it's important to kind of think about, remember, saving and then investing. So you've got mortgages and notes. I'm going to talk a lot about that. Real estate. Now, a lot of people think that real estate has a barrier to entry. Believe it or not, real estate actually has the lowest barrier to entry of any investment because it's the only investment across the board that has readily available leverage. The very first investment I ever bought, right, 2011, wish I'd have bought 20 of them. A buddy of mine and I, we bought a duplex for $60,000. We each put in $3,000 into an LLC, and we borrowed 50 grand from his parents. That investment, I think we borrowed all 60, but that investment was $3,000 out of my pocket. It's the best investment if I look back from a dollar and cent standpoint, and it was an easy investment. And his parents loved it. They made money. We made money. But it was the first investment I ever made. It was $3,000. And I did two things. One, I partnered with someone else, right? I spread the risk, but I also spread the cost over a second person. And two, I used leverage. Right? That's the power of real estate. Now, it doesn't make it better than any of the investments, but it creates opportunity. Private stock, investing into private companies, partnerships, debentures, these are debt instruments, LLCs, precious metals. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, but we're going to talk about some strategies inside of each of these that can allow you to extend the purchasing power of your retirement account. So let's start with real estate options. This is something that, I see a lot of people do, and in certain, every investment plays better in markets, right? So if you think about how the markets work, when real estate is going gangbusters, right, which we saw in the last few years, some strategies go out the window, right? They're just hard to deploy. If you deal with short sales, right, and there's properties going through the roof, there's very few short sales, right? That strategy is a little bit harder. But in every economic cycle, whatever that looks like, you're going to have opportunities that become better or more readily available and less readily available. I've always loved real estate options, although I've never actually done them. But I love real estate options. The idea behind a real estate option is very simple. You acquire a property, right, at a price and sell it before you actually acquire it. Now think about how real estate works, right? What's the first step of buying a piece of property? An offer, which becomes a contract, right? I will give you 200 grand for this property. And I'll give you $1,000 as a deposit, and I will close in 45 days, right? Over the next 45 days, if I go to Cleve and say, Cleve, here's this property, would you pay $220 for it? Right? And if I negotiated a good deal, you may say, yeah, absolutely. And now what do I actually sell to Cleve? I sell him the contract. Because I'm going to say, hey, I'm actually going to let you buy this property for $200, and you're going to pay me the $25. Good deal for you because you didn't want to be in the marketing of the property. You don't want to have to go through that process. Great deal for me, right? We see this, a lot on properties that need work. Realtors don't want to show a house that's in shambles. Sellers aren't in a position to go pay commissions, right? You have all these things that pop up. And so we see this a lot. They refer to it as wholesaling in the investment world. But your IRA can buy the right to buy a property and then go sell it. And people ask all the time, like, why would anyone ever give up? Why would anyone let someone do this for their property? And you realize that the world is full of an incredible amount of scenarios. And not every scenario has an easy exit. And so sometimes, right, somebody just getting that 10 grand of cash today and knowing that this property is sold and being done with it is all they need. They can't afford a realtor. They can't afford to go fix the property up. They can't afford to do those things that make it worth more. So they have to sell it at a discount, right? But that discount sometimes is fast and easy. And we're all willing sometimes to take discounts for stuff that's fast and easy. No different than we're willing to pay a premium, right? It baffles me how often I see Uber Eats, right? It's not a good conscious financial decision, but we're willing to pay for convenience and ease, right? Well, what do you think the seller of these properties doing? They're paying for convenience and ease, right? Way easier for me to let someone else go deal with this problem of a house. Maybe I inherited it, right? It's been in the family. Dad didn't take care of it. God only knows what happened. Or no one's lived there in 10 years. We just realized that we need to do something with it. I mean, you would be amazed the stories that we hear. So from a account standpoint, we see a lot of these deals and we love to see them in Roths, right? I take something under contract for a few $1,000 and I sell that for maybe twice, 3 times, right, what I've got into it. 100% tax free. Now, why does that make so much sense in an IRA? Well, there's a few reasons. One, if I do it outside of my IRA, I'm always creating short-term capital gains, right? Because it's likely going to be less than a year. So I'm moving into a tax-free environment, the highest. Now, if I was going to do this and hold it a year, I'm actually getting less benefit to put it in my IRA because I'm getting long-term capital gains versus no tax. Now, it's still better, but it's still something worth considering, right? 3 different scenarios. The second thing is that they tend to be high return. Maybe not in dollars, but as a percentage. So anytime you can make high returns, you want that in the most tax-free environment that you have. And the most tax-free environment that we have is a Roth, right? Real estate options are a great strategy. They require work, they require effort like any investment, but they're great strategies, right? Certainly something to consider. Raw land on a contract for deed. So you can buy real estate and either sell it on a contract for deed or hold it. So I've seen clients do this and it's super cool. They'll go out, right? Actually, we have a client whose son, and he's been a long-time client, his son is now in investing, but when he was probably a teenager, what he would do is he would go find the cheapest pieces of property he could find next to an adjacent house. And some of these properties were, he may have tried to get through tax deed or whatever, but so let's say he found a $4,000 piece of property anywhere in the US. He'd buy that property, and then he would send it, he'd pay cash for it out of his retirement account. And then he would send the people on both sides of it letters offering them financing to buy the property for $100 a month till it was paid. So think about it, right? So you buy property for $4,000. Well, the people that live next door may not have even known it was for sale or may not have even thought to buy it, right? But now you give them an offer to say, hey, for $6,000, right? Paid $50 a month for the next whatever that is, 120 months, you can own this property. And he's creating these annuity streams where he's getting payments every single month into his IRA. So he's making profit on the property and he's getting returns. And it's amazing how many people, especially if you can find these at like tax deed auctions and other things, it's amazing how many people, when I first heard that, I thought to myself, gosh, if you called me, and I live in a development where I don't have a lot next to me, but if you called me and there was a lot next door, I'd probably be interested. But I don't know that I'd have the wherewithal to go buy it on my own, right? So that's where real estate from a raw land and contract for deed, the other thing that's kind of cool, and you got to follow the guidelines and laws, but contract for deed is pretty cool because you don't actually get the deed until you pay off the property. So if that person pays $50 a month for the next 3 years and says, you know what, I don't want to keep paying, we just sold our house, we're moving, they don't own the property. You still do. If they don't pay you, right, it's like rental. They rented the land and said it was theirs for a certain period of time. So pretty cool concept. I say that because it's something that you can deploy and develop internationally. I look at real estate all the time, everywhere. And you can use Zillow or any other website that's out there. You can show me every piece of property that's over an acre that's under $5,000. And then you get the little red dots, and then I look and go, all right, where the heck is civilization, right? Is it close? Is it somewhere in the vicinity? And, we tend to think from a retirement or from an investment standpoint, we don't want to wait. We're just natural. We all want something quickly. But if I look at some of the land, and depending on where you live, I mean, we're here in Orlando, I can tell you, I moved here a little over 20 years ago. And I mean, I can tell you areas that are fully developed, cost a fortune to buy anything there. 20 years ago, they were cow patties. I mean, you could have bought it for, $1,000 an acre. It's selling for $5,000 an acre, $50,000, $100,000 an acre, right? So what does that path to progress look like? And can you find some stuff that's on the outskirts and hold it, right? A lot of that stuff is cheap. The taxes are cheap. There's no real cost of ownership. So something to look at. Tax liens, all right? Tax liens is one of those investments that 2 years ago, you couldn't find a whole lot of them. Now, as we start to have some economic challenges, right, whether we're in a recession or not, and I think we're going to find out from the Fed here in a little bit. I'm assuming they're going to bump another 25 basis points. But as that happens, right, property values may have softened a little bit. People may not be sitting on the same equity. And as a result, they may not pay their property taxes. What's really interesting about property taxes, I saw a class one time, and the instructor put all these famous people on, right? And you're like, all right, this is interesting. Like, why are you showing me pro athletes and celebrities and all that? And he got through, 10, 20, 30 pictures. And he said, guess what? What do all those people have in common? And they're like, they're rich. And he said, every one of them had a tax lien on their house at one time. Why? Because you forget to pay it. God only knows what happens. The beautiful thing about tax liens is that typically, I won't say they always get paid off, but you have options. But the reason a lot of people buy them, they don't buy them for the property. Some people do. They buy them for the interest. The county has to run. The county has to get the money for that tax to meet their budget obligations. So they sell them at a negative interest rate starting at 18%. And the bidding goes down. Now, as people bid on them, but in 2009, 10, 11, you could go to the courthouse and buy all the tax liens you want at 18%. Now, right, we were in a deep recession, right?
It take a little while to get the money back.
You had to hold it, but it's accruing. And it's a title-based investment, meaning they can't sell the property without you getting paid. So it's not like you even have to monitor it. Someone at some point is going to see your lien. So, but it is wait. You got to wait to collect. But tax liens are cool. They're bought in a lot of different ways. I am covering kind of the way Florida does it. Every state does it differently. Most of them you can do online now. But it is pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity in the tax lien world. But what's nice about this is a lot of tax liens are the value of property taxes. So someone with a $3,000 tax bill, you can buy their tax lien for $3,000. If you get it at a 12% interest rate, 12% interest is 12% interest, right? That's a great return. It'll outperform the S&P, right? So there's a lot of opportunity there. Personal loans. This is one that we see a lot, right? What are people paying? I mean, the average rates now, and this presentation's a little bit older. I don't even know what credit card interest rates are up to now, with interest rates going up 500 basis points, right? We go up another 25 basis points today. So if you think about that, how many people do you know are carrying credit card debt? They may have good income, good jobs, right? Well, what if you could help alleviate that credit card burden and say, look, don't pay Chase 23%, right? Pay me 12%. So these opportunities are there. Now you have to understand the borrower. You have to understand whether or not they have the capability to pay. What's their job? What's their income? Is there collateral that you can get? I mean, you want to understand all of those things, but it's amazing how many people carry credit card debt at a premium. Those are all opportunities for smaller balance accounts. You got 30 grand on a credit card? I'll pay 20 grand of it off today. Pay me 12%. Partnering. This is my favorite thing to do. I've been doing this since I started my first account when I started in 2005. I made my first investment in 2007 in my 401k plan, and I have done a variety of things since. So in my own life, from an account standpoint, I have my own 401k plan. I have a traditional and Roth inside my 401k plan. I have an IRA. I have an HSA. I have an ESA for both my kids. So I have 5 accounts that I oversee. Right? Of those 5 accounts, most investments I've ever done involve all 5. because it allows me to split it up. Now I've done some independent stuff, but the most recent deal that we just did was we just did a private money loan, right? All 5 of us loaned the money. Now, obviously my 401k, having had it for nearly 20 years, has a lot more money than the HSAs and the ESAs do, but I can do a deal where I could do 60% my 401k Roth, 30% my 401k traditional, 5% my HSA, 2.5% my kids' ESAs. That return goes right back to us pro rata. Now, I tend to do a lot of my partnering on the lending side, but we've done real estate deals that way. We've partnered with investors in that same manner. The thing I like personally about the debt side is it's a little easier for me. It's like mailbox money. I get to sit back and collect it. I know the rate of return. I don't have to worry so much about market conditions if the deal's done right, the borrower's got good, good collateral in it. But you can split your accounts up in a variety of ways, and it doesn't just have to be IRAs. Now, I give you an example of me and my own retirement accounts, but I could actually do a deal where I took my personal money and my son's ESA and buy something together, right? If you're going to buy any investment with people that are related to you, right, whatever the amount is that you put in, you're writing it in permanent market. Whereas if I partner with people that aren't related, so let's say there's 4 of us in this room and we divide up a deal 25% each, we're all unrelated, right? I could buy any one of you guys out. We could shift the percentages as long as it was a fair deal between us. But if that same scenario and we were all related and disqualified parties, we couldn't move to 25%. Make sense? Right? So if you're going to partner with family, this is the thing I also like about loans is there's no more money that comes out in the loan, right? Whereas if we bought a property and the roof blows off, right? Does my daughter's, she's only 3, does her ESA have enough money to cover the roof, her portion of the roof? And so it's a little easier, especially with smaller balance accounts, to not have to worry about that risk. But partnering can be just a great strategy in any investment. I love this quote. Don't wait to buy real estate, buy real estate and wait. Now, real estate's not the only investment we deal with, but I just feel like it's such a great quote because it kind of triggers the idea of, we do the waiting, right, while it's moving. Let's do the waiting while we own it. I do want to hit on a couple other things that we're seeing a lot of. So when you think about investments and you think about things that you can do, one of the things that I love about, and I'll say on the real estate trend, is leverage. Because it allows you to take, right, your little bucket of money and the bank's much bigger bucket of money, right, and combine those two things to buy a house. Right, there's my little doors, windows, right? Little grass, feel like Bob Ross. That's what leverage does, right? So I could buy this $100,000 property, and this could be 10 of my money and 90 of the bank's. That's the power of leverage, because when I get the return, if I buy this for 100, I'm using math that's easy in my head, and sell it for 200, who gets the 200? Yeah, right. Now I got to cover the 90, but that's 110. To this account. That's the power of leverage. You can't beat that, right? The other thing that's really, really cool about using leverage is you have a lot of different ways that leverage can actually generate return. So leverage can generate return in the form of interest arbitrage.
Can you use the thicker marker?
Sure.
Maybe just let me know.
Sure. All right. I can do it, but it's going to take me a second to. All right, I don't know that I can. Or if Maggie wants to help, that's much thicker, but it's the wrong color. This is where technology is. Maybe I'll do it in black and we'll just see if that helps. So a couple things. All right, obviously leverage is critical, right? You're using third-party money to be able to get more money into your account. The second thing is interest arbitrage. So a lot of people don't think about that. We think as as interest rates go up, that we're stuck with that. One of the things that's really cool and something that a lot of people don't think about is if you buy real estate today and you pay 6.5%, right? You are only locked into that so long as you want to keep it. So if interest rates come down, right, and they're at 4%, you can refi. Where else can you invest where you can get out of higher interest rate into lower interest rate? So if the numbers pencil in at 6.5, they're going to look darn good at 4, right? The other thing that you can do that a lot of people don't think about is not just refi, but cash out and buy more, right? So let's now buy this second house. This one has a flat roof for some reason. Looks more like a pumpkin, but now we own and control 2 properties. So there's a strategy, and I always say it this way, I don't know if there's a better way to say it. It's called BRRRR, right? B and then a bunch of R's, right? I think it's buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat, right? And it makes great sense because if I can buy, increase the value, get a renter in there, now I have clear income against the property to go get a new loan, refinance, take the 20 grand, come over here, get another loan, take the 20 grand, come over here, and I can rinse and repeat. But with a small balance account, I have that opportunity. In the stock market, 2 grand only buys you 2 grand, 10 grand only buys you 10 grand. You cannot use margin in an IRA. Yet in real estate, I can. The other thing that we're seeing a lot of, and we have it obviously right now, we're not seeing as much cryptocurrencies, right? You can buy fractional investments in those. So any dollar amount, I mean, really, if you talk about any dollar amount, now you're not getting leverage, you're just choosing an asset class. But we've seen a lot of clients with smaller balances get into crypto. Their belief is that it's a good asset class and they can enter into it at lower price points. We work with a group that you can go and trade through. So we are not the broker. We are not the ones that clear it. We don't hold it. We provide the custody of the account and then you trade through that account. But you can fully trade all cryptocurrencies through an account with us as well. Lots and lots of strategies, lots and lots of things to be thinking about there. As far as getting set up, that part's easy. As we say, don't wait to buy real estate and wait. Don't wait to set up a self-directed account. Set up a self-directed account and force yourself to participate, right? There's a lot of ways you can put money into these accounts. If you're going to get there by contributions, my recommendation is set up an automated contribution, right? Don't wait till the end of the year to contribute. Contribute as much as you can every week, every month, whatever your cadence is for getting paid. But there's a lot of things that you can do. If you have money sitting at other institutions, old 401ks, IRAs, we can transfer those in. Typically, they can all go into the same account as long as they're the same types of tax treatment. I can't put Roth money and traditional money together, right? We're not allowed to do that. But I can put all your pre-tax money, regardless of how many accounts it's in, all your Roth money into the same account, regardless of how many accounts it's coming from. As far as the process go, I mean, it's really set up the account, right? Fund it. That's something that you've got to decide where you're going to put the money in, whether it's transfers, rollovers, or adding money and contributions. And then it's go out and execute, right? What are you going to invest into? What's that strategy? And the goal in all of this is to get to a point where you have 4 or 5 different buckets to consider from an investment standpoint. So remember I told you I have 5 different investments, right? Investment accounts that I oversee. I get to make decisions differently on all of them. So depending on what investment opportunities I come across, dictate what account it goes into. And it may go into my personal account, right? If I invest into a deal that's got a lot of tax benefit, I'm going to put that in my personal account, right? All the accounts have different time horizons, right? Like if I had something that was, my son is 11, right? That money is earmarked for college. Like I can't be as long in an investment in that account. If you said, hey, this is a 5 to 10 year hold, I probably wouldn't touch it in an ESA account for myself. My daughter's 3, a 15-year horizon, right? It may be a way better account. In fact, it may not only represent a better account, it may be the best account because it's got the longest horizon. So those are strategies that we get to deploy once we get those savings vehicles set up. And in a perfect environment, you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different options on where to invest and how. One of the things that I did was I did a loan, a private loan, and it was at an okay interest rate. I put that in my traditional 401k, right? A loan at a fantastic interest rate is going to my Roth, right? Why do I want the lower return, not a bad return, but the lower return in my traditional? Because it's not growing tax-free. But everything in my Roth, I want to cherry pick out the deals that are going to yield me the better return. So the beauty is you get to pick and choose. And so if we leave here today and just think about a couple things. Number one, are you saving in as many accounts and are you utilizing tax as an investment strategy? Because the amount you make or save on taxes should be factored into your return. The second thing is are we putting away as much money as we can? Right? Just because it's sitting in your bank account doesn't mean you're saving it. It just means you haven't spent it. Putting it into the right vehicle means you've saved it, whatever that vehicle is. And there's other vehicles behind what we're or beyond what we're talking about today. And then the last thing is, how do I build a strategy, an investment strategy to go out and deploy? Right? Whatever amount of money you have, you can put to work. There's no question about it. But does your strategy match what you have? Right? You're not wearing designer clothes for $10. If you are, you're gonna have to shop really, really hard, right? So are you aware of that from the get-go? Is your strategy being set up to understand that, hey, I'm gonna have to shop a little harder for this? But all of these things, anything that we talked about from a traditional Roth, SEP, simple, HSA, ESA, solo 401k, can all be done or can all be self-directed. Every investment that we talked about, from real estate option to contracts for deeds to tax liens, tax certificates, cryptocurrency, real estate with debt, private notes, partnering, all of those can be done across any one of the accounts. The rules work the exact same. So opportunity is there. Obviously, we've got to make a decision to get out in front and take advantage of it. Our website, Nuview Trust, is full of information. We love that you guys are on our live classes, but if you want to go to our YouTube channel, we do have a podcast called All About Alts that we just started. I think we've got 4 live episodes. We've got 6 or 8 that we've recorded that'll come out every Wednesday morning. But that's something also that we'd encourage you to take a look at. That's about 80% guest speakers, right? We're bringing in people from all different walks of life and all different intersections with self-direction to help navigate and create ideas and thought around how to use these tools as best as possible. So I will pause there. We're right at 1 o'clock and I will open up the floor to any questions, whether they be live or online. Anything that we haven't addressed, Maggie, anything from the online community?
No.
Okay. Any questions from the live community?
Sure. I'm just getting started with your firm.
Great.
So I had a self-directed 401k. Then I retired 3 years ago. I started self-directing it and had a LLC that I decided wasn't doing well enough, so I'm shutting it down.
Okay.
So I've invested mostly in those because that's what my dad did, and we all inherited those when he passed away. So we've had that money coming in every month for quite a while. So I've got a Roth account, non-Roth, and trying to determine how to make that money work while I'm waiting to save up for the next account. One account, I save up till I get 20 grand and then I invest it in another.
Okay.
The other one, I put the money into a trust account, TD Ameritrade, and I buy dividend stocks.
Yep.
When it gets up, I'm looking to start buying some rental properties.
Okay.
And that's my plan so far with all the excess money. I've also got personal, like you said, I'm gonna, CPA say need to buy a rental property or 2 for the tax benefits. So I said, okay, we could start doing that. So that's where I'm at. Currently, I'm interested in the ESA for grandkids and great grandkids because I got my first great grandkid on the way.
Congratulations.
But the parents don't seem to be as enthusiastic. And so
Well,
they feel they're being left out of something or whatever. And so I'm trying to figure out a way to have that conversation. The conversation's been started, but they're all day to day, week to week with what they do with their funds.
Sure.
So it's a little bit of a hiccup in the plan.
Well, first of all, you have a plan. So you're doing better than half the population because half the population doesn't have a plan. So first of all, congratulations on getting to that point. Plans are meant to be created and adjusted and modified, right? And you have a lot of factors that will dictate how your plan gets adjusted, right? I like to think of a plane as just a direction, right? It's like the buoy that's out in the water, but it's going to move, right? What you want to make sure is that you're going close enough to it and it's not moving, fast enough where it's never out of reach. So as you're navigating through that, right, you have a couple things that are coming into play. One is you have some investments already in mind, but you don't feel like you've got enough money to get to some of those yet, which is great. You've got some additional savings opportunities with kids and grandkids, but you've got kind of the familial piece of that to reconcile, right? So we'll start at the top. So the first thing is from an investment standpoint, you have to decide whether or not you're looking for temporary investments or permanent investments. And there's nothing wrong with either. So if you were to take money and go put it in dividend stocks, as you said, that's a temporary investment is what it sounds like. And you're only doing that to get enough money to move it into what you would consider a permanent investment, not forever, but this is the true investment philosophy. So the question is, can you get there sooner? Right? Do you need that temporary investment? Is there another way to get there? You mentioned you have some personal money, you have other accounts. Have you considered partnering those together, right? Even though that trading account may only have a few grand in it and you're trying to get it to 20, can you use the rest of the money that you have to sum up to 20 and get the return? That's one option. Second thing to keep in consideration from a family standpoint, and we're firm believers in this comes up a lot, is education. And, if you think about one of the things that we see that's probably the most painful for me is inherited accounts when one of our account holders passes and the inheritance have no idea what the account is. So what do they typically do? They have this, a lot of these are illiquid investments, right? They're private, there's no open market, and they end up fire selling them. I've seen clients fire sell real estate. I've seen clients literally, fight over what to do with an asset because they just want the cash. And that's something that we encourage all of our clients is, are you educating your heirs, right? You received notes because your dad owned notes, right? Did your dad give you that guidance and understanding of what those notes were before you received them, right? Without that, baptism by fire.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sounds like you've navigated through and recognized, hey, dad was doing the right thing and he's really done me a service by giving these to me. But if you've got siblings, I'd be willing to bet some of the siblings aren't in notes anymore, or they've been trying to liquidate them. Well, what happens if you try to liquidate a private note? You probably take a discount. So from an education standpoint, from an ESA, the family, how are you moving money? I can't recommend, bring your family to our classes, get them to our YouTube channel. And it's not just us, there's plenty of great companies out there that produce education. But if they understand the value of what that ESA is actually providing to them, really what you're doing is saying, hey, we're going to create an environment where you can save and invest for your kids and your kids. That's their financial responsibility to go to whether it be college, trade school, right, private school. We're going to create an environment for that tax rate. That's what you're doing with an ESA.
What happens with the ESA if it's not used by the kids?
So a couple things, great question. So at 35, it has to be withdrawn. So if I have an ESA and I turn 35, which I'm past at this point in my life, I would have had to withdraw it. Now, when I withdraw it, if I do not use it for qualifying educational expenses, I have to pay tax on it as I withdraw it, because it works like a traditional IRA at that point. It's only tax-free for educational expenses. The other option is it could be passed to another sibling in that same family. So my older son, his ESA, right, obviously is the one, if we have to choose which one we can put money into in a year, we put it into the older one. So that in the event that he doesn't use it all, right, it can be rolled down to our younger child. So you have some strategies, but part of that discussion and that we get to have with our kids is, hey, this is your savings vehicle. He knows he has an ESA. He knows that it owns, variety of investments. And we've talked to him about what it owns. Now, he gets it, but he doesn't quite get it, right? But, we talk all the time about, hey, if you find other ways to pay for your school, this is your money. So if you decide not to go to college, I have no problem with that decision as long as it's not a lazy decision, right? If you want to go to trade school, if you have scholarships or any of those other things and you don't need to use this money, it's yours. It's honestly the number one reason why I chose the ESA over college prepay or any other plan. Because it's the only plan that you can really have a true financial education to your children about and instill how money works. So I hope he gets to school and realizes, hey, if I work a little bit and don't burn this account down to zero, I may have 20 grand left. Right? What if I took that 20 grand out, paid the tax, and used it to buy a house or used it to buy an investment property? Right? So I can't say enough great things about the ESA and all the things you can do with it. But to be able to sit down with an 11-year-old and talk about a private note and that he gets to earn interest on the money, right, that's coming in from that note and why people pay interest and the benefit of being on the other side of that, right, which is being on the side that earns the interest rather than is paying the interest. And then to be able to translate that into this is yours to use however you want. The ESA is as flexible of an account for education. In theory, we could use it to pay for his private school at any age. So you don't have to even wait till post-secondary education. It's not like a college plan, it's an educational plan. And the fact that we can also weave in the tax-free discussion out of it is really cool. We collect all the money that our kids get, Christmas, birthday, whatever it is, aunts and uncles, they'll mail a card with $20 in it. We take all of that money and we deposit in their accounts. And then we make up the difference every year that we can afford to at the end of each year. But they're great plans, and a lot of times people just don't understand them. That's where the educational component comes in.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
The ESA is only good for your immediate family children?
So the question for those online is the ESA only good for immediate children? The answer is no. The way that it works is it's $2,000 per receiver of the money. So in theory, and we can make this a reality if you really want, you guys could each contribute $1,000 to my son's ESA.
Okay. Well, a girl in Jamaica that we sponsor and plan to bring her here for college, we could use this for her.
I would have to get you an answer on whether or not she's eligible to receive the money today, because I'm assuming she does not have a social.
Correct.
I don't know the answer to that. But let's assume that you were sponsoring someone that lived in Washington,
right,
and she was going to move to Florida. Then the answer is yes, you could actually save, because you're not getting, the reason why you can do is you're not getting any tax benefit to save. It's just like giving them money. But what you're giving them is tax-free growth, right? And I think it's more than that. Yes, it's tax-free growth. That's the benefit. But the real benefit is you're giving it to them in a vehicle that's earmarked, right? So one of the things that in some of our other classes where we get more deliberate that I talk a lot about is, if you're going to leave money for your kids, the beauty of an ESA is if you educate them right, it's for education. Leave them the same 20 grand in a bank account. I love my son to death. I think he's a great kid, but you give that kid 20 grand at 16 years old and he can spend whatever he wants on it. It ain't going to education, right? So there's some benefits from a tax planning standpoint, of course, but there's also some benefit from legacy planning. Kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, being able to deliver them something that you're giving them money, but you're giving it to them in a way that teaches them a lot more about it. Inheritance is the hardest thing because it's blown, right? They say the first generation earns it, second generation realizes they have it, third generation blows it. And if you go back as far as time to the wealthiest of families, very few people have ever had money lapse past the third generation, ever. And you can go back to the wealthiest of families, right? Go look at the Vanderbilts, right? The Biltmore. That money's gone. There's a few people that have some notoriety and fame around it, but the wealth that they built when they were one of the wealthiest families in the world, it's gone. 3 generations, gone.
With the ESA, once you establish that it's dedicated to that, for that child.
You can only move it to a sibling.
Okay.
Yep, you can only move it to a sibling of that child. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming. Everybody online, thank you for taking the time to join us. do take a look at the All About Alts podcast every Wednesday. That's additional content as well as our YouTube channel. And then all of our live classes we produce every week. So we have a new live class every single week. Keep an eye. We're always updating and changing some of the content. So there's always a little bit of overlap, but we'd love to continue to educate as much as we can. So thanks, guys.